Hi folks, welcome back to the channel. Great to have you. Today I'm talking about grading from anywhere sort of Ikkyu Shodan Nidan level, okay? And that kind of progression, it's quite an important bit of progression that in fact it goes all the way to Sandan, but I'm not really going to talk about Sandan too much because I'm only Yondan. So I don't think it's right for me to comment. It's, advice on Sandan should probably come from somebody a little bit further up the food chain. Higher level sensei. So I'm just going to talk about some advice for and some common issues that come up in gradings for Ikkyu Shodan Nidan, that sort of progression level. So let's talk about what's required first. At least here in the UK for the BKA's requirements, Ikkyu is a grading paper. There's usually two questions. They expect short answers like 250 words or less. And it usually be something simple like, why do you do Kendo instead of other martial arts? And they may ask you to, describe what you know about Kikentai no Ichi or something like that, okay? And that's usually there just to encourage you to reflect on your Kendo and get in the habit of understanding that you are going to have to write down answers to questions, think about concepts, reflect upon things, just to get you in that habit a little bit and introduce you to that. But otherwise, they're not taken with too much weight. So if your answers are not perfect and you don't, you're not like Sun Tzu or something, or Musashi Miyamoto or something, don't worry, okay? They don't expect you to be. The panel members, I mean. You also need to be able to do Kirikaishi, and you will have two. So you cut Kirikaishi, receive Kirikaishi. You'll also do Jitsugi Keiko, like Jikeiko. You'll have two bouts against two different opponents. So that means two opportunities to show what you're there to demonstrate. And then if you're successful in that first portion, then you'll demonstrate Kata. And if you're still mostly successful after that, then you've passed your grading. Okay. Shodan, same thing. The requirements for the kata are so for Ikkyu, the requirements for kata are Ipponme number 1 to Sanbonme number 3. The requirements for Shodan are Ipponme to Gohonme, so that's 1 to 5. And for Nidan, it's Ipponme to Nanahonme, so 1 to 7. Okay, so all the long sword forms. So by second dan, you should know all the long sword forms. That's a pretty good way to think about it. Okay, so aside from that, what are you there to demonstrate? You're there to demonstrate that you can make strikes with Kikentai no Ichi. Okay, and the criteria for that is exactly the same for all of those grades, but the level that you're expected to demonstrate at increases. Okay, so what does that mean? Ikkyu, we're looking for like the right foot and the cut, bang, together most of the time. It's mostly there, okay? So the fumikomi is there, and you can time it with the sword, the cut landing and the shout, the kiai, if you want to call it kiai. Kiai is really like mutual energy. So kakegoe is the shout. But anyway, time it with the shout. Most people call it kiai, so we'll call it that. Time that with the foot, the feet, the strike, and the shout together, bang, most of the time. And if you can do that, like by cutting 1 or 2 clean men on each opponent, you should pass your grading. And if you can do it through your Kirikaishi, okay? In a nutshell. Now we'll get into the details about what gets in the way and how to deal with that, okay? Because it sounds simple, but a lot of people, it's a big ask on the day for a lot of people. And we'll talk about reasons for that. Shodan. So let's say you do that 80%, 90% of the time, you should pass your Ikkyu, in everything that you're demonstrating on the day. For Shodan, they expect that to pretty much just be in place. Like, so every time you do like, you know, a cut that you're good at, mostly men, maybe a couple kote, they expect that kikentai, that stamp shout, footwork to be pretty tightened up. It's there almost 100% of the time. Okay. Doesn't have to be particularly fast. You know, they're not expecting miracles from your footwork, but it is fundamentally, you have this thing that when you strike, your body is kind of all going forward with the sword, and you know, it's just tightened. So, yeah, same thing, just moved up a notch. Okay, Nidan's a little bit different. Nidan, it's the same thing, but they really want to see this idea that you are ready to strike again, essentially. So you've taken all those elements, the kikentai no ichi, and your kamae, yeah, your posture, so the way you stand, the way you move your feet, you've taken that to the next level where you're not just prepared to like cut once, turn around, re-engage. Yeah, you can cut and cut again, right? So you can cut, and maybe that cut wasn't successful, but it opened up another opportunity. So like you cut kote, and they sort of defend and go like this, and then straight away you know, because you see the men's open, you can cut the men. And that's why so many people give you the advice of, oh, you should just cut kote men for Nidan, which, yeah, it's taking it a bit literally, but they're not wrong either. You know, if you can do a good kote men, it does demonstrate the level, the criteria demonstrated to the correct level. Okay, and we'll talk a bit more about why that is. Okay, so let's walk through the day of your grading. So the first thing I want to talk about is turn up early and turn up with your questions, your answers, all of that prepared well in advance. There's a lot of people like that can be quite last minute. Oh, my grading's this weekend, and you know, they print it like the night before or something. I usually have my questions done, like if I know I'm grading, I'll have all of that stuff finalized like a month in advance of the grading. You know, like a fortnight before or a week before, I'll have it printed off and put in a Polly Pocket, and I'll have all, you know, I have to travel quite far to my gradings, living in Northern Ireland. I usually have to go over to Scotland or Northern England, or rarely, or used to be able to do them in the Republic of Ireland in the south. But as I've reached you know, Sundan and higher, I can't, that option's not really there on the table so much anymore, because you need more panel members, higher level panel members, and it's hard to get all of them into Ireland at the same time, if that makes sense. So for logistics purposes, it's easier for me to do this in England up until 5th Dan, and then from there it's going to get hard again. I might have to, you know, go to Europe or further afield. But point is, you know, with a week to go, I've got everything. I've got all my travel documents, everything's booked, everything's printed, you know, it's all done and dusted, everything's wrapped up. I just have to turn up on the day, do my kendo, and obviously see if I'm worthy of a menjo. So my point is this, turn up early, turn up prepared, make sure your gear is in the best possible condition it's ever going to be in. Make sure you got your paperwork, you know, your questions, maybe even carry a spare printout. One goes in your clothes bag, another one in your bulky bag, just in case like you drop one somewhere, like, or it gets wet, one gets torn, I don't know, something like that. But have this mental attitude of preparedness. So you turn up on the day, turn up nice and early. They open the hall. First thing they do is just see if you can help out. Okay, the people who organize these events and they actually play a role in running the event. You know, they're just doing it. They're giving up their own time, if you know what I mean. They're not getting anything for any remuneration or anything. So, if you can help out, okay, it doesn't contribute towards your grading in the slightest, but it's the right thing to do. Okay. So once that's out of the way, maybe they don't need help. They tell you, no, that's fine. You know, you go warm up. That's fine. At least you offered. Okay. So once that's all done and dusted, and you know, get your kit out, try to figure out where you're going to be if you can. If they don't know, then just keep your ears open. Okay. But try to figure out, like, you know, what the layout's going to be like. get your gear moved to a position where it's accessible. Get everything set up, get your bulgur ready, and get ready to warm up. So, do the same stretches that you would do in the dojo. If you do Suburi, keep it to a minimum. Yeah, just like, I don't know, 20 or 30 men, 20 kote, 20 do. That'll do. Maybe a bit, and then just, maybe if you want to psych yourself up, maybe do like 30 high Suburi or something like that, just to like pump your spirits up, okay? The main thing you want to focus on in that warm-up time, if you're going to do like a warm-up practice, is focus on your Kirikaishi and probably focus on your Kihon. If you do some Kihon men striking and Kirikaishi. If you've got space and time to do it, maybe you want to do a bit of Jikeko, that's fine. Yeah, no problem at all. But certainly I would go through Kirikaishi and I would really think about, like the big men that starts your Kirikaishi, the one in the middle, the one in the end. When you're doing your Kihon men practice, think about that. Keep that in mind of how do I want to do those men, okay? Because they're very important. So let's get stuck into it and talk about the you've warmed up, you've done all that, everything's ready to go. Your Bakuto is set out in case you actually pass the first portion of your grading. So the next thing you want to do is, they're going to line you up, get you in your sticks, your lines ready to start the grading. Make absolutely sure that everything is pristine in terms of like your chokuso, right? How you're dressed, how the knots are tied, the bows on your gi, nice horizontal yokomusubi bows, or the wonki, right? Get that sorted, okay? Make sure there's no creases up the back of your keikogi. Pull those bits forward so that it's a nice flat back panel. Don't show like too much chest like that. Make sure it's all like neat and tidy. Check the knots in your door. Make sure again your komusubi around the back. Yeah, horizontal bow around the back. Make sure the loops and the ends are nice and neat. They should only be like 10 centimeters, maybe a bit less in length, and it shouldn't be flapping and dangling around everywhere. It should sit not tight, but flush to your back pretty much, okay? Dohimo up here, double check, triple check, you really don't want them coming undone. They only have to last 2 bouts, 2 Kirikaishi and two bouts of Keiko. So if they come undone, it's pretty indicative that you can't tie them properly. So double check, triple check, okay? And then obviously when you get your men on, check that the himo aren't twisted. Make sure they're not raveled around each other. The knot should be behind your eyes. Okay. And dare pulled forward. And the ends of the himo, no longer than 40 centimeters. And again, nice and even. Yeah, the ends and the loops, make sure they're nice and even. So the first thing is look right on the day. Most panels, they don't want to fail you. Okay, they're looking for reasons to pass you as opposed to reasons to fail you. But if you turn up looking, really, really unprepared, your gear's not right, the knot's untied correctly, things keep falling off you, then you're not really ready to turn up and demonstrate technical stuff. Yeah, you need to be worrying about more basic things. So that's a good way to think of it. How can I presume to turn up and say, I'm going to demonstrate this deep concept, Kiken Tai no Ichi, but I can't tie knots. Okay, so think of it from that perspective. It doesn't look good. So turn up, like I said, well prepared, everything well kept, nice and clean. Your tenugui, when you wear it, just a note for this, you've got the part that sort of sits on your forehead here, and then you've got the part that sits on your chin when you're putting your men on. Make sure that your tenugui doesn't come all the way down your eyebrows like this. It doesn't look good, okay? It should be out of your field of view. If it's down by your eyebrows, your men could move and push it over the crest of your eyebrows, and then it goes in your eyes, and you've got to stop the grading, and it's not good, okay? So get it up here. So when you put on your tenugui and it's sitting like this, just before you put on your men, just take the whole lot and just push it back a little, so it sits like that, okay? So your face is clear. So stop sweat dripping from your hairline into your eyes. That's all it's there for, okay? Make the men slightly more comfortable, but the other thing is don't have a rooster tail, yeah? So if you tie like the wraparound method, what's common is to have this like flappy thing at the back here. Avoid that. So you tie it around, you wrap it, pull the bit on top, then reach around, find a flappy bit, and fold it underneath itself, so that it, the fold is here, right on the back of your head, right? So when you put your men on, it's going to trap that fold, and you got to get a nice, neat and tidy look from the back of your men. Okay, so now you're well dressed. The next thing is enter the Shiijo correctly. Okay, there's a lot of people that have put themselves in very bad standing with the panel because it couldn't bow in and out of the Shiijo properly. Again, same concept. If you don't have control of your chokuso, the way you look, and the safety of your gear, and if you can't do reiki, then how are you ready to demonstrate that you profess to know anything technical about Kendo? Okay, so it just puts you in the wrong light if you can't do these very basic things. So make sure that you understand them. So you don't bow until you're in the Shiijo. Okay, nothing is official until you've entered the Shiijo. Okay, when you're outside of the Shiijo, you're just and you bow to your opponent. You're sort of doing it for no reason. Okay, nothing has begun. Okay, so you're gonna line up. You'll be shown which side you're gonna be, and you'll have some indication of obviously who's kakarite and who's motodachi. So let's say, for example, kakarite is on the right side of the screen, motodachi on the left side. Okay, you'll first need to step in the Shiijo. Then rei, 3 steps in, to the line, okay? Look, if you're like an inch short of the line, that's fine. Try not to be an inch over the line. Rather be slightly short than slightly over. Because if you're slightly over, then they definitely there's a high likelihood they're going to have to stop and correct you. If you're a little short, they'll probably let it go. Okay, if they know what they're doing, they'll let it go. It's about you not getting advantage of the other person, so it just needs to be fair distance. So if you're slightly too far away, it's not going to affect the start of the encounter. But if you're too close, then it could be argued that it's a bit unfair towards the other person. Okay, but make sure you do that. So you do 3 steps into the line and sonkyo, stand up. Okay, then you'll get the command Kirikaishi, right? And kakarite side does the Kirikaishi. Now, first thing is, a lot of people drop the ball here. They go, yeah, in isoku itanamai, right? 1 step, 1 cut distance. They do the kiai here. They step in and go, yeah. This is incorrect. Okay, from toma, where you are too far to strike each other. This is where you do that kakegoe, the shout. Yeah! Step in to isoku and cut. Okay, cut, taitari, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, back to toma, step in, cut, taitari, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, back to toma, step in, cut. Okay, so each time for those big men, you should come out to toma, step in to isoku and cut. But that first one, the kiai happens, this is the very first thing you do, before you step in, not after, or not during. Yeah, semi, bang. Okay. Now, in terms of like things to look out for, okay. Obviously, you need to get the timing, the cut, the stamp, the shout. Okay, you know what you're there to do. If you don't, you need to watch a series called Zero to Shodan that Andy Fisher from Kendo Star has produced. I'll pop a link up around about now, but please watch my video through to completion before you follow the link. I'll put it in the description as well. It's a very good course on just the technical requirements of what you need to do to pass Shodan specifically. But it's the same for Ikkyu, just not quite as high a level. Okay, and same for Nidan, just slightly higher level. Okay, so back to the Kirikaishi for if you're Ikkyu Shodan level. Things to look out for. Remember that the panel, depending on what side they're sat, they can see your side profile. Okay, so when you lift, if you're lifting like this and you've got a kote on, okay, what they see is a kote is probably blocking your view like this. Okay, and it's a bad habit. It's just a bad habit to leave your kote like constantly up like this in front of your face. Okay, so you might think you're lifting like this, but you might only be here. just enough to not hit your head with your own suba. So be generous with the lift, okay? But rather than like pull back like this, which is quite a big habit for a lot of people, push forward and up, okay? Forward and up like this is a good feeling to have. And what that means is the kote come well out of your eye line. Okay, so what the kote are going to finish what here. Okay, so they can see that you've got clear line of sight. If you can do that for most of your cuts, that's quite a good thing. It does bug some panel members when you can't do a large cut properly. You know, you're not opening your body enough. So that's one thing. Main things though is that can help you demonstrate the Kikentai no Ichi is to have a bit of a snap in a cut, a bit of tenoichi, but yeah. So stop the shinai from like bouncing off the head. So it shouldn't be like doing, doing, doing like this. It should be bam, bam, bam. So the sword stays with the opponent's head, okay? And the timing of that and your left foot is very important. So nice slow suriashi, spang, spang. Yeah, suriashi is your sliding feet. Spang, 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 spang. Right. Every time the cut finishes, the left foot comes up. Okay. And it's not. That's gonna destroy your partner's head. Okay. It's on off, on off, on off. And that's better for your technique anyway, because you want to be relaxed most of the time. So only for that very split second where you're actually impacting that you need a bit of tension in your hands. Otherwise, relax. So nice and big, nice and relaxed. Don't bounce the shinai. And bring your left foot up. Okay? And just keep everything nice and big. Big footwork, nice big motions in the cuts. And like I said, Toma, Isoku, bang, get those three men really tight. That should be you for your Kirikaishi portion, okay? And that's like, for Ikkyu, it's like you can pass probably 60% of your grading there. Maybe that's, yeah, probably about 60%. For Shodan, it's probably like 50-50. You need to nail your Kirikaishi and nail your Keiko, I would say. For Nidan, you want to do exactly that same thing, but more fluid. Okay, so it just needs to show that your balance has moved on, and you can do those sayumen more like with more of a consecutive, like a continuous feel. But you can still show that you have the control of the shinai, and the snap should be even more relaxed, but it should also be more pronounced, right? So it should be more saye, more pop from each cut. But you don't need as much time to do it. Yeah, so for Ikkyu it might be sort of like men, 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 men. Yeah, for Shodan it might be exactly the same as that, you know, or men, taitari, men, men, men. Yeah, but continuous. Yeah, men, 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 men. That's another thing as well. Don't do the short, sharp ki. It should be one continuous, but just emphasize where the strike is. Yeah, that's why I'm doing that. So, man, 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 man. This is absolutely fine for Shodan. For Nidan, they kind of want to see a little bit more fluidity. It's not speed per se, so it might look something more like, yeah, man, taitari, man, 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 man. And definitely have the breathing correct, yeah? Kirikaishi should be in 3 breaths. So for Shodan Nidan, I would say definitely have the 3 breaths down. Ikkyu, you might get away with it. And it's the whole ensemble, yeah? But I think a lot of it is going to be down to the tenoichi, the hiketsuke, the back foot moving up with the cut, the timing, the cut, kiai. Those are like the cornerstones. But they are looking at all these other things as well. There are some sensei who like really put a lot of value into breathing, and they'll take it. They'll dislike it more if you don't have it down, if that makes sense. And that's the reason why you've got like a panel of 5 or panel of 6, depending on the grade. is because they do value different things. So you need to tackle it all really, so that you hopefully pass convincingly with each of the judges, no matter their perspective on the basics of Kendo. Okay, so that's the Kirikaishi portion. And obviously you'll do one side cutting, one side receiving. And you'll do that with different partners. So let's talk about the Keiko portion now. So like I said, you're there to demonstrate literally what you just done in the Kirikaishi, those three big men. Try to pop one or two of those cleanly on each of your opponents, so you get 2 chances. You may have been given the advice at some point by like a sensei or senpai. Senpai is just like a senior student in your club maybe, for example, or at the seminar if it's at a seminar or something. They may just tell you stuff like, just cut men, and you're probably better off just doing a big men cut. Yeah, just do big men. And then you'll go on to like the Kendo show, and you'll hear from Andy Fisher saying, no, you don't need to do a big cut. Okay, it could just be a small cut. So on the face of it, that sounds like conflicting information. Okay, first thing is recognize that Andy Fisher is Renshi Rokudan. Okay, so that's Renshi 6 dan for a start. So put that in context. So if your senpai is like 2nd dan, I'd probably take the advice of the 6th dan first, which is not to say throw out the advice of your 2nd dan friend or dojo mate, but you may want to find out a bit more about what that is. But broadly speaking, I would probably take the 6th dan advice over the 2nd dan's advice. So that's the first thing. But the other thing is you got to remember that like people in your dojo, so maybe it's your sensei is giving you advice, so maybe your sensei might be 5th dan, or something like that. I would take your sensei's advice over Andy's advice, if I'm honest, in the situation, because your sensei knows your kendo. They know your immediate needs, your short-term and long-term needs, because they see your kendo more regularly. They know like the ins and outs of your habits, whether they're good or bad, that sort of thing. Okay, you may be told by some people to stick to big men because they feel like you have a better chance of demonstrating a higher level of kikentai, so a higher level of controlling this kind of timing of your body, your sword, and your spirit together as one. They may feel you have a better chance of doing that using big men. And when you do your small men, it doesn't show your best kendo. So that might be why they're saying it. And it's a bit like when they say just stick with men, only cut men. I would say don't take them too literally, okay? Because it's one thing in an ideal world, just going, oh yeah, I'll just cut big men, I'll just cut big men. But I'm about to show you how that goes really wrong. And you can look through YouTube and you'll see loads of examples of this going wrong, okay? So realize that you will probably use mostly men. You'll probably use a splashing of kote. You'll rarely, if ever, use do or any hikiwaza, but it may come up, so you should still train them. Okay. Okay, so let's talk about what should it look like. Okay, it should look like when you come in. Okay, so you finish your Kirikaishi, you've come back to the line, and they say Keiko. Both players build a bit of spirit. Yeah, they come a little closer. Maybe they rotate round a little bit. They feel each other out. Come a bit closer. Get contact with Shinai. Maybe one pushes this way, the other one pushes this way, and then one steps in. Boom! Right, and catches the other one by surprise. Oh, that'd be lovely. Okay, that's one of the men cuts you need to pass your grading. And then you turn around, and the other one kind of catches you by surprise. Yeah, boom, and it goes through. Oh, great! Now you both pass your grading, right? But that doesn't happen at this level. What usually happens is this: they go, yeah, men. And they both cut at the same time. So the first mistake is they stepped in and went, yeah, as they stepped in. And as a habit, for some reason, everybody at this level goes, yeah, 1, 2, 3. Yeah, 1, 2, 3, and you can pretty much count it out as a spectator. You can basically count the timing, and it's because they're kind of nervous. Everyone's told them just cut big man, just cut big man, and everything will be fine. And they've taken it just very literally. Okay, so you got to remember that you're there demonstrating. You've just demonstrated that what you're doing there. Yeah, man. Right, you've basically done that in your Kirikaishi, but if you follow my advice, you've done it better, right? By not doing ya cut instead of yeah cut, yeah, which is the correct version. So you've demonstrated it to that level. When you're in the Keiko portion, you are now in a tachi flow. Okay, so basically you're applying the principles roughly of the katana, or a context of like a sword duel, to show these principles. Okay, broadly speaking. So there's a flow that happens, right? You don't rock up in a sword fight and go yeah and cut together like this. Okay, that's a messy way to go about it. It should be a bit more control. You should try to take a bit more control than that. Okay. It's too early to expect like genuine like seme, like genuine pressure, but you can do things like you can play with the timing. Okay, so to get out of this thing of both players cutting together and zooming off in the distance, I'll show you a few different ways to get you to that. And that's another point actually, before I show you that, don't zoom off into the distance. Okay. Yeah, so you don't cut and then da 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 da, turn around, shuffle, shuffle, shuffle. Yeah, shuffle back, shuffle back. Yeah, cut. Shuffle, 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 shuffle. It's a waste of time. It's a waste of space. You lose connection with the opponent. You lose sight of the opponent. You're not even looking at them. It's not good for business. Yes, you need to drive through them, but you need to drive through them maybe 2 or 3 shinai lengths. Okay, not the length of the Shiijo. Okay. Okay, so let's talk about ways that you can start to do that. Okay, so you can do it a couple of ways. You can do it by just changing the timing outright, and you can do it by using slightly different waza here and there to force your opponent out of this autopilot situation. Now this applies to Ikkyu, Shodan, and Nidan, and I'll cover the waza in like all 3 levels if I can. They're basically the same waza, just performs to slightly different levels. So this is where the small cut, big cut thing comes in. Okay, if you have reasonable Kikentai no Ichi with small waza, you should use them at this point. Okay, you don't use them in your Kirikaishi. That's big Kihon exercise. But if you've got good enough control over that for Shodan, certainly and higher, I would use them at this point. Okay. You may want to, depending on what you think of the panel, if you get this idea that the panel wants to see big cuts, show them mostly big cuts, but you may need the small cuts to disturb the other player's rhythm if you don't have time and space to do them. Okay, so if you keep clashing into each other like this, one way that you can do it, as you go past, if you can realize what's happening, and you go, that's happened 3 times now, instead of you zooming all the way off here, cut, and you turn around straight away. And this person's still zooming off. Meanwhile, you go chasing after them. And you just hover at the edge of cutting distance. So as they turn around, you semi-strong and do a small cut. Do a small end. Okay? The panel will know, even if you don't do a brilliant small cut, the panel will know that you've tried to take control and change the rhythm so that this pointless dance of continuous big men stops. Okay, so that's the first thing. The panel will like it, even if the men wasn't good enough to get you through your grading. They will respect the fact that you know that this isn't the rhythm. Okay, that somebody needs to do something to change something. Okay, and what you'll usually find is if you get like a clean strike there or something close to a clean strike, your opponent will probably behave a bit differently. They may not though. So there are a couple other things that you can do, but again, try to get that clean men strike, okay? You can, of course, hit kote. So if they're constantly lifting like this, yeah, man. Between here, Chudan, and here, if you can strike the kote somewhere between there, Ikkyu Shodan level, even Nidan level. Nidan level, they may be looking for this a bit more, right? You know, I'll get to that in a second, but you know, you're not really there to demonstrate Debana kote, but if you can catch them here and they feel it, they'll be less inclined to lift their hands, or they'll start to get some doubts and they'll maybe hesitate a bit. The timing will change, and when that happens, you should have the gap that you need to execute your clean men strike. You know, like if they keep lifting their hands and you're not fast enough to catch the kote, and the door keeps opening for these big periods of time, only an idiot wouldn't hit the door, okay? So remember, it's not what you're there to demonstrate, but the panel will understand that you are hitting the door for a reason, because it's bloody well open all of the time. So hit it, okay? And just do the best you can, but mostly follow the advice of sticking to your men. You're using that door or that kote as a tool to stop your opponent from just basically doing this up and down the Shiijo at the same timing all the time. And that'll force them to kind of engage with you. Yeah, bit of interplay, bit of connection. Now he's a bit worried, like, oh, I can get struck. That's the time to strike. And you should get your 2 clean men per opponent by doing that. Nidan, a little bit different, okay? So it's exactly the same thing, but because you're there to demonstrate improved balance, much more like Hiketsuke, more fluid. You often get told to do kote men, yeah? Kote men, yeah? 1, 2, 1, 2, yeah? Like this. Kote men. Okay. That's fine. It's one waza that demonstrates those criteria. Just bear in mind that they'll probably also be trying to do it. So the same thing tends to happen. But you hope that they're a bit better. So rather than going, yeah, they go, yeah. Kote man, right? If you just change your timing a little, and you control the length of your footwork, okay? So in Nidan, what's really helpful to pass your grading is if you don't take the same size step every time you do a cut, okay? So it's typical of Shodan, like when they do like consecutive cuts, it's always exactly the same size, yeah? In Nidan, it's quite helpful if you can go short, long, or long, short, yeah? Or short, short, and then push through. Okay, so you can control the length of your footwork quite well. If you can do this, you can do what's called ai kote men. Yeah, so it's together, kote men. But instead, what's going to happen is you're going to hit there, instead of them coming like this and cancelling each other out, you're going to catch them here, bang, right on the end. And then they're not going to be able to get their shinai back up for the men in time, and you'll have time to catch your men. Yeah, if that makes sense. So it becomes kote uchitoshi men, in effect. Okay? So you're hitting it, striking the shinai down. Now don't try to strike the shinai down, just cut down the center. Short and sharp, yeah? For Nidan, I want to see the technique in your Keiko portion shortened. So it shouldn't be these big attacks anymore. It should bam, bam. Yeah, short and sharp. Okay? And that's how your footwork should be as well. So kote men is one version, but remember you can also do really simple things to demonstrate that same elevation in the quality of your footwork and your balance. So you can it could just be the way you do your seme men. Like, so it's Shodan, but maybe it looked like this. Seme men, right? But maybe you can do it a bit more sharply. Yeah. Seme men, yeah. It's difficult to describe. Or it might be, maybe it is faster. Maybe you do it faster. Fast isn't wrong all the time, right? Could be tension, tension, seme men. Yeah. As long as that left foot is with you, then that's good. Okay, and the snap of the cut, the tenuchi, like I said, it's got to be smaller and sharper. And if you can do that a couple of different ways, like maybe you can like I said, you get your 2 clean men, take a nice dip on a kote, maybe a kote man somewhere, and like one hikiwaza, one reasonable attempt at hikiwaza, or show that you can at least respond to hikiwaza with good balance. I think you're confidently like you should really comfortably pass your grading then. Even though you passed your grading on the clean men cuts, the fact that you've got some options on the table, and you've got the footwork, to boot to show that off, it should be in the bag. Okay, and that's what I mean by it's the same criteria, but the quality of it is higher. Okay, so just to recap, EQ, it's like key kentai 80%, 90% of the time it's there, but everything is still like it's really big. Okay, really slow, don't rush it. It's all about precision. Okay, you're not there to like own the other person. Oh, and don't worry if you get struck. Yeah, you're supposed to get struck. They're supposed to strike you, and you're supposed to strike them. Okay, it's not a match. It's not Shiai. Shiai is there to test all of your kendo. Grading is like a job interview, and there's a specific thing. We want this from our candidate. You turn up and you show them that. You don't have to tell them anything else about you. Okay. So yeah, 80% to 90% of the time your key kentai is basically there. It's big, it's beautiful, respects the basics, that you're taught in your kihon. Shodan, the same thing, but moved on. Okay, the quality is much higher. It's pretty much there like 99% of the time, 100% of the time. Your cuts, your feet and your shout are together. And you can, I would say, if you can find the space to land these clean strikes, that's another indicator of somebody who's, I think, ready to pass Shodan. The fact that they have an awareness of what's actually going on in the Keiko. Yeah, they're not just there like panicking. They turn up and they're like, I can see what's going on here. I'm going to take the opportunity to change the timing. Yeah, I'm going to run up, like chase him down and go get him. But that's not a pass or fail criteria. But I think it's one of those things that's like a bit of a mark of like a strong Shodan. It's like, yeah, this guy gets it. We're not here dancing. We're doing a tachi together. Nidan is like I said, it tends to look faster, but it's more balanced and more fluid. Techniques have been shortened. The excess fat is starting to get trimmed off, and you can control the length of your footwork to match what you need to do with those techniques. Okay, so when you do kote men, small waza, pam pam, it's not these big steps all the time, and they're not all the same length. You can really control that back foot. The back foot controls your distance to your opponent. So if you can really control that back foot, you've got good wrist work, good grip, but you can still do the Kirikaishi, big, beautiful, and fluid, then that should be in the bag. Lastly, we'll talk about kata. Okay, so that's the kind of Kirikaishi and Jitsugi, the Keiko portion in the bag. If you pass all of that and you get the opportunity to do kata, you should understand that that's mostly your grading done. It's like 80% passed basically. You really, really have to do something badly wrong in the kata portion to fail it. And this is why I said at the beginning, when you warm up with stuff in armor, turn up knowing your kata, but don't spend a lot of time on it. I think just before the grading, unless like maybe like one run through, but don't spend like the whole half hour of warm up time or whatever doing kata. I think it's a misallocation of resources. But Ikkyu is ippome through sanbome, and they really just want to show, they want to see, first off, before you even get into that, make sure that you fix yourself up, right? You've just had your bogu on, and you've been bashing around, screaming and shouting. Take a moment, like tidy yourself up, tidy your gi back up, check everything is neat and tidy, okay? When you do your kata, you want to look your best, okay? But the same thing applies as before. Step into Shiijo. Correct rei in, right? So make sure, like, don't do silly things like have your bokuto upside down and stuff like that. Bokuto in the wrong hand. You really don't want to mess up in those sorts of basic ways. Um, anyway, so you know, you go from your Shisentai to Taito. You've read Shisentai, Taito, 3 steps in, Kamae, down, this time touching, yeah, Bokuto touch, tip to tip, stand up, get on, back out, and then usually at this time they'll point out like Uchidachi, Shidachi, Hajime, or maybe they'll do like Ippome, Hajime, whatever the case is, right? So you know you've come to Kamae, shout the command, you know your roles, off you go. For Ikkyu, it's Ippome through Sanbome. You need to show that you know the kata. Okay, so just know the kata. Don't worry too much about how good is the ski. Maybe I cut a bit short. So don't get flummoxed by stuff like that. Don't worry too much. Just get through the correct moves, do the correct footwork. You know, cut roughly to the correct targets, but it doesn't have to be screaming perfection. Okay, just show that you've learnt 1, 2, and 3. 3 is a hard enough kata anyway. So the fact that you know number 3 turning up there is a good indicator that you're on track with your kata. And that should be you done. Okay. If something goes wrong and you know it's gone wrong, finish the kata, come out to distance, Shodan, and put your, leave your left hand on, right hand up. The panel will see it, and they'll either give you an opportunity to redo it now, redo it at the end, or they'll say, don't worry about it. Okay? If they say, don't worry about it, don't panic. That means that they're happy that so long as you know that you messed up, chances are you know how you messed up, and that means you understand the kata to the point that they need to see it. But sometimes they'll give you the opportunity to redo it because they'd like you to finish on a high for yourself, for your own benefit, your own peace of mind, not just theirs. Although they may want a second opportunity just to see you do it, just to tick the box. But don't worry, it happens. People have brain farts, they freeze. It happens, don't worry. Okay. I've seen people at much higher level gradings than Ikkyu completely mess up kata, way worse, and still pass on the day, even though they got shouted at. But yeah, you don't want to be one of those guys who gets shouted at. But anyway, if you have a brain fart, you won't get shouted at though. You'll just probably get a second opportunity. Okay. Shodan. Shodan is 1 through 5. Now it's a bit different for Shodan. You want to start showing that you're moving on a little bit. So your 1 to 3 should look a bit more polished. You should really have reliably start cutting to target now. You also want to start showing some glimmer of connection, right? So when you generate pressure, when you're in your ballgoon, you're full of energy, and your ki is really powerful, and your intention towards your opponent is genuine. You really are trying to hit them, right? You want to see some glimmers of that starting to filter into your kata, because you know the kata well now, 1 to 3, you know it really well. So you should have a bit of confidence with it, yeah? So it should be a nice connection and interplay, if you can, with the other person. You want to be returning to center really well as well by this point. Ikkyu maybe still get away with being slightly off center. Make sure you're coming back to the center of the room and know your roles, that Uchitachi is the person who fixes the distance and generally moves first in the kata. Stuff like that. It's polished, so these things should be visible for 1 to 3. 4 to 5, you just need to know him. So it's a bit like Ikkyu, right? So those are your 2 newest kata, essentially. So you just need to know it. Nidan, same sort of thing. 1 to 5 should start to look snappy and polished. And 6 and 7, you kind of just need to know it, because 6 and 7 are quite tricky. Number 6 is like number 3. It's tricky footwork, tricky waza, lots of elements in it. But I think not only just showing that they're polished and there's a good connection, for Nidan, maybe also start thinking about the reason for things in kata, the riai for things. So in your 1 to 3 and 1 to 5, hopefully, if you're lucky and you do a lot of kata in your club, your teachers are starting to talk about some of these things. This is the reason why this is in the kata. this is the reason why you take this posture, etc., etc. So that mentally you can start showing some of that, maybe, in your Nidan grading. Certainly for Sandan anyway, but you should be starting to look in that direction, I think, a little bit by Nidan level, if you're like a comfortable Nidan pass. So that's it. I'm going to wrap it up there. That's pretty much, that's what you need to do. That's some of the pitfalls and problems that can happen on the day, and hopefully some good examples of how you can overcome them, some things that you can use. So it's not that any advice that I'm giving you conflicts with what you've already been told. It should hopefully complement it and just give it a bit of context. Likewise, to the likes of Andy Fisher on his channel as well, I hope this gives some context to show why he's not wrong. So where you might want to use a small attack. How you evaluate, should I be doing a small attack, shouldn't I be doing a small attack, and if you've been told maybe by somebody not to so much, why you might make your decision override that. Remember that on the day you're there as a free agent, you take your Nafuda off, no one knows. I know that they know, all right, the panel probably know you and stuff like that, but generally speaking, the idea is you go there as, anonymous. You're a number. They get a paper with a number on it. They see a number on the side of your tare. You make your own decisions in there. It's up to you. Ultimately, people can give you advice. They can tell you what they think you should do, but it's up to you to actually pick what you're going to do. It's a martial art. It's not a academic test. If that's a good way to put it, okay? It requires you to make your own decisions and your own reflection and evaluate what you think is going to work best for you. Moment to moment, day by day, week by week, month by month, year by year, okay? And you would be wise to take people's advice, but you need to think about the context and how much weight you put in each person's advice, or you'll drive yourself nuts. Anyway, I hope it's been helpful. If it has, please do leave a thumbs up and a comment on the channel. It will really help the growth of the channel. I hate to ask, but needs must, since it's a very small channel and I do need to grow it. And I hope to see you back here soon. In the meantime, take care and bye-bye.